What makes a good investment grade property, in your opinion?
Something that in time, you can make a few improvements, kitchens and bathrooms and, fresh paint and maybe outdoor area and so forth. So location is, paramount.
So what's a trick of good negotiation skills?
So being prepared, being ready to have had the contract looked over.
Is this the right time to buy? Welcome to our Property Investor Series. Today we've got Katrina or Brien. Welcome, Katrina.
Thank you, Asim. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, great to have you here. So, Katrina, when did you realize that property was your thing and that's what you want to get into?
Okay, so I can actually say that going back to when I was, 10, sitting in the back of Mum and Dad's car on a Sunday listening to, I think, 3MP on the radio, driving around, going to display homes and open homes. I think back then, I can actually look back, I didn't know it then, but I can look back and say that that was probably the start of my journey for homes and that sort of thing. Obviously, I didn't realise I was going to be in real estate, but that was my passion. So I can, I sort of feel that but see, I've already, because I'm thinking too much about it and probably gone. So, and then, later on in life, I, sort of went into thinking that maybe it was interior design that I was interested in. But, it didn't take me long to realise that wasn't quite it either. Colours and so forth weren't necessarily my thing. And I think it was just the real estate, industry. I just thought, why not give it a go? People want to listen to women. Women are very good at selling homes, I think, on a, empathetic and emotional basis and so forth, and can be very good, strong negotiators. So I think that's what sort of led me into the real estate industry.
That's a really good point you mentioned about negotiation and how your background helped you to achieve those skills. And what do you find a good negotiating property in when, each side is actually happy with the buy and the sell? Mm-hmm. Do you have an example you can share that something like that happened and, all parties thumbs up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, a big thing is, when a vendor is choosing an agent, it's very important that you have a very good relationship, but you've also got to choose an agent that you feel that the buyers will resonate with, because at the end of the day, the buyer has got to feel comfortable and trust the agent so that they, you're getting the best, result and achieving the best result for the vendor. So I think that's really important for a vendor to consider when choosing an agent, so that there's got to be that trust there from all parties.
So do you see that interest rates, which are now easing, is it the investor market how it was back in 2021, or is it still room?
No, there's still room, yeah. So the investors are still, basically looking at offloading property, but what we are finding is we're getting a lot of inquiry for properties from interstate investors.
What makes a good investment grade property, in your opinion?
I think something that you can value add to. I think that's important. Not necessarily it has to be straight away, but something that in time, you can make a few improvements that will be appealing, such as kitchens and bathrooms and, fresh paint and maybe outdoor area and so forth. So always think about the value add, but very importantly, think about the location. So location is, paramount. As long as we've got great schools around, you've got good public transport, infrastructure, that sort of thing. I think that's really important.
And as an investor, when we're buying a property, what does an investor think about the tenants? But how does a tenant think about a property when they go and do an inspection of a property? Yeah,
I think for a tenant, they're looking as to occupy something to be their home. So it's, very important that, there's all different reasons why people are, going to lease a home. So I think we've got to remember that, it's very important to them that they're comfortable, So light factor, size of rooms, making sure their family's comfortable, plenty of storage, security as well. I think that's important. Lock-up garages, those sorts of things. Areas where, they can get around nice and easily, their family can get to school and so forth. So it's got to be really comfortable because it is going to be their home. Whilst they might not own it, but it is going to be their home for a period of time.
And with the market interest rates going down and slightly easing up of finance available, so you will see some more activity happening in market slowly. So what's a trick of good negotiation skills? So what are some of the things as buyers or sellers do or say which works?
Yeah. I think good negotiation skills really comes down to having done your due diligence as a buyer. So being prepared, being ready. I think it's really important to have had the contract looked over already. Be prepared. An offer is not an offer until it is in writing, and formal. A lot of people shy away from actually putting something in writing until they've had a response from the vendor as to whether they'll accept. But you need to show that you're serious by putting that offer in writing. Best way to be as well is to have an unconditional offer. So, do your due diligence, have your building inspection beforehand. As far as finance goes, have your pre-approval. I think that's all really important so that it shows that you're serious as a buyer and you're ready to open up, the line of conversation. Also, from a vendor's perspective, if they've got an offer in writing, it shows that, you're serious and, let's negotiate, let's talk.
And let's talk about auctions, which is can be really stressful for some people. And
yes.
What can a buyer do, or a story you can share where, someone was really standing out in an auction and was able to get a good price, a good bargain in an auction? So is there anything you have for us to take away or share?
Yeah, well, I think, again, it's all about doing the due diligence beforehand. And if you've done that and you're really comfortable and you're there, it's about if you've found a property that you like, you've invested time. Obviously, for an auction, you're on the market, the property's on the market for 4 weeks. So you invest a lot of emotion and time into that property. So if you've done all your due diligence and ticked all the boxes, then be positive at the auction. And, under competition, yes, you may overpay slightly as far as being put under pressure, but sometimes it's worth it if it means that there's other people that are wanting that property too. There's a reason why. So it can often be, it's a good investment in the long run because property will always do well. We might go through some ebbs and flows and ups and downs, but generally it's a great place to put your money.
So good due diligence give good confidence in auction.
Absolutely, yeah. If the due diligence is done and you've spoken to all the right people, whether it be your mortgage broker, your conveyancer, the agent, rental side of things, property management, if you've done all that and you're clear with where it's sort of heading, I think then, go forth and bid strong.
Yeah. Do you see when buyers walk through a house, what are some of the things a buyer should notice, which they sometime when it's very well staged, they forget to see? What are the key ingredients to look in a property when you're going through it?
Yes, I think that's the thing with styling. Everyone styles these days, which is great. And you kind of need to do that because you're in direct competition with other properties on the market. But I think, having a building inspection, I think that's probably the most important thing, just to give you that confidence so that you're aware of if there are any issues, just, that how much will it cost, to have that issue fixed. So is that going to be a deal breaker for you so that you can factor in those sorts of things? Sometimes a building inspection might bring up something that is not necessarily major, structural or anything like that, but it's just something that you might have to consider down the track. So it might not put you off buying now, but at least you've got an idea that, whether it be in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, you may need to tend to something like that. So I think, doing that sort of, those sort of inspections beforehand is really important. Just look at where you can maybe add your own value. I think that's very important as well. So, if most of the property's done and it presents really well, it's all neat and tidy and everything's sort of, looking good, but a kitchen may need a bit of an update, but it's perfect perfectly clean, livable, functional, all of that. As long as everything's functional, then adding value, having a property that you can actually add your value to down the track is also, really important, especially investment-wise, rather than paying for somebody else's renovation that's not quite right or to your taste and so forth. So kitchens and bathrooms are often, something that you can look to do something with down the track.
You've already answered the most common question we get asked about renos, what should we renovate to add more value? So kitchen, bathroom is the obvious thing.
Kitchens and bathrooms, yeah.
Anything else you would say which will add more value, like a granny flat? Is that happening nowadays?
Yeah, definitely. We always find that anything that has basically the potential to be a granny flat, particularly in this day and age where you've got extended families and also the cost of living and so forth. So we are actually having a lot more buyers that are looking to have their in-laws stay with them. They're selling off the older, their in-laws' home or, parents and so forth, and having them move in but not necessarily move into the family home, having a bit of separation as well. And also for young adults that are trying to save for their own home. So that granny flat type scenario is actually a real bonus and very sought after.
That's cool. And if you have to give one advice to a first-time investor, what would that be?
Basically, do all your homework beforehand. Have somebody that's working with you, have your mortgage broker, have your conveyancer on hand, get to know the agent, have a good relationship with the local agent of the area that you want to buy in so that they're basically knowing that you're serious, that you're ready and wanting to buy. Give them a bit of a time frame, give them all your sort of requirements or the boxes that you would like to have ticked. And the agents will, any good agent is going to keep you informed of any properties that become available, whether it be off market or coming onto the market.
And as an experienced real estate agent, when you walk through and doing an inspection of a property, there are subtle things you will pick up, which sometimes buyers do miss. What are some of those things which you would pick up, say it's a red flag, which buyers might miss?
Well, sometimes it's about floor plan, to be honest. I think that's probably one of the most important things because changing a floor plan can actually be the most expensive exercise. So updating a kitchen, updating a bathroom, giving, a lick of paint to a property, changing carpet, they're all cosmetic things that can be done and are easy. But sometimes if the floor plan doesn't work, then that's a big cost. So, a lot of buyers can get caught up and emotional because of the location or how pretty it looks on the outside or everything looks done. But when it comes to it, it's got to have functionality.
That's cool. And I'm going to ask the $1 million question right at the end, which is this the right time to buy?
It's always the right time to buy.
So we don't need to practice mindfulness. We get straight into it.
Yeah, look, it is a good time to buy. We know that there's going to be some interest rate cuts hopefully soon. The sooner the better for all of us. But, Melbourne market, it's always going to be good. As I said before, we're always going to go through ups and downs along the way. But generally, if you've got your money in property, you're always doing well. So, yes, it's a good time to buy.
Is there any example you have to share where, there was a property, you put it on market, and the results was way above expectation?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So we actually had one recently and, it was fabulous. We were looking after a friend and a client and actually she was selling her mother's home and she'd gone into an aged care home. So it was really important to me that we did a great job and we had a great campaign. We had loads of people through, lots of good interest, and come auction day we had 5 bidding at the time. Price was incredible. So, it was way more than what we expected and, under competitive bidding. So it meant that there were a number of people that felt that it was worthwhile and they wanted to invest in that property. But the best thing of it all was our buyer, was ecstatic. So they've paid a premium price, but they're ecstatic with the service. Vendor is over the moon as well. So to have that combination of an ecstatic buyer, ecstatic vendor, you can't get a better scenario.
That's a classic example of good customer service, and that's what drives business nowadays.
Yes.
And do you have any stories to share where things didn't quite actually work out, where the property was great, but we didn't got the price we wanted to achieve?
Well, I suppose there's always going to be times when we all think our property might be worth more than what it actually is. And, again, it's about good management and sort of giving the feedback to our vendors along the way. And I think that's really important, communication. So, because at the end of the day, the agent's not buying the home, the vendor's actually selling the home. It comes down to the buyers, and the buyers are the ones with the money. And if generally across, the entire campaign, the feedback that's coming back from the buyers is generally the same, and sort of the sort of expectations on where the buyers think the property sits in price, if that's sort of sitting, generally across the board, that's sort of saying something. So whilst it is not often great for the vendor, but at least with the communication that they can realise that, that's the sentiment across the board, and that means that's what's, the property is worth in that current market.
It's actually a great answer. Can I say that?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's, being honest. Being honest, yeah.
Yeah, like we all want to, I've sold at auction and we didn't get as much as what we wanted, and I'm an agent. But at the end of the day, the buyers were there. They're the ones with the money. So I can't argue with that. Yeah. You've put it out there. That's the beauty of an auction, in that respect. Or whether it be auction or private sale, you can still get the same, private sale or expression of interest. You still, having the buyers putting their best foot forward and negotiating. At the end of the day, it's going to stop somewhere.
Well, Katrina, thanks for sharing all that wisdom.
Thank you.
And unpacking all things real estate and property.
Thank you, Asim. It was
Thank
lovely.
You for having us.
Great to chat.
Likewise. Cheers.